One golden nugget of advice I got from my father-in-law a long time ago was you need to think of rest and recovery as part of your job. If you don't treat them with the same level of importance as you do your career, you will eventually burn out and your body will show signs. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard a story about someone going to the hospital because of severe stomach pain, chest pain, nosebleeds, or bald spots, only to be told by the doctor that they couldn't find anything and that it's likely just from extreme stress, I'd probably be a rich man by now.
Excuse me, Masen.
Welcome to another episode of the Excuse Me Masen podcast. I'm your host, Saul, and it's officially here. Summer. It is super hot these days. No joke. I was borderline going to stop making episodes this summer because it's so damn hot. But then I remembered that SCO uses these shirts that have holes in them where you can attach small fans, especially made for them. And then when you turn them on, they inflate the shirt and keeps you cool, which is exactly what I'm wearing right now. If you're listening only on audio, then of course you can't see it. But I got this one in olive gray. And yeah, man, it's a game changer, especially for Tokyo summers, because it does get hotter than Saipan, for example, these tropical places. It's equally as humid as it is as those places. And yeah, even this room, I mean, this apartment, the way it was designed, this room cannot have an aircon installed. So I either have to open the door, which would let in all the sound from the living room, or just deal with the heat. But with this setup right now, as you might be able to see in front of me, there's this tiny little brushless fan that I was able to find on Amazon that's really quiet, plus the 2 fans inside of this shirt, and then another quiet or silent fan at my feet. And you may or may not be able to hear it. I'm not sure how effective my noise suppressor plugin is working, but yeah, hopefully you're not able to hear it. They have different brands, but I wanted to go with a legit made in Japan one, which turns out to be this one. And this one is actually made from a brand called Burtle. That's turtle, but with a B instead of a T. So that's Burtle. And this episode is not sponsored, by the way. So if you plan to come to Japan in this extreme heat, or you live here and have yet to try this stuff, man, it's chef's kiss, man. It's really good. Just check online or consider looking up at like a retail store. I got mine on Amazon, JP, of course. But there is also a store called Jonetsu Shokunin. Yeah, and there is one in Kasai as well. If you listen to the last episode, you know it's all about supporting Kasai. And there is Jonetsu Shokunin here that is right outside of the Don Quixote. And Don Quixote does own this place. But just for your information, I went there yesterday. And while they did have the battery with the fan packs, they only had one choice of shirt. And it was some kind of like a bright red, almost looked like a down jacket, like those winter ones with a hood on it. So if you're not into that bright, flashy design, then you're better off getting them online. I got, like I said, this one on Amazon. I have another one coming in khaki, but this design also has black, navy blue, and what they call silver, but it actually looks more like a smoke white. And to me, they all look pretty good. But yeah, with that said, let's jump right into it. So in this episode, I want to share some insights about what I wish I'd known before moving to Japan 14 years ago. If I could go back in time and give myself a few pointers before moving, I'd have spent less time on the packing list and focus on the mindset. So this episode isn't about what to bring. It's about what I wish I understood before moving here long term. So naturally, the first pointer to myself has to do with language. When I decided to come to Japan, I had 3 years of Japanese from high school and roughly 2 years from college under my belt. I also used Japanese regularly at work and had already accumulated, I guess, a bunch of Japanese friends. So I assumed that I was good to go, but I was mistaken, to say the least. So those of you who listen to the show regularly may recall that I said that I was nervous even going to the 7-Eleven when I first came here. And that's because the Japanese I was exposed to back home and the Japanese that is spoken here in Japan are very different. Not only is the wording different and the speed unforgiving here, but the slang, the abbreviations, the Japlish terms, and the idiomatic phrases are vast and they're constantly being updated. And even some are being deprecated over time, the same way as it does in the English language. Depending on where you're from, there are going to be different ones, right? So whether you're in Cali or New York or England or wherever. But before this part gets too long, I have learned through personal experience that you will miss out on so many potential connections with people if you procrastinate or let fear of embarrassment from mistakes hold you back. And I'm not going to tell you the best way to learn because, of course, everyone's different. But whatever you do, I would say you should start now and stick with it. When it comes to learning to speak a new language, mistakes are going to be your best friend. That's just been my personal experience. And then getting back to that 7-Eleven story, in the beginning, I was always nervous because whenever they had some kind of promotion, the staff would try to sell me on it using what's known as keigo, which for those of you who don't know, it's Japan's very polite form of speech. It's kind of like the difference between English's casual way of saying like, "Hi, what can I do for you?" at a store versus somebody saying, "Good afternoon, sir. How may I be of assistance?" Like almost like that Iron Man. What's that guy's name again? Uh, Jarvis. Yeah, it's like that. Just imagine Jarvis, and that's Japanese keigo, like the super polite English. Yeah. So, anyways, my mind would go blank whenever they did that. And I'd often just say, like, arigato, and just leave. But I had to come back very often. So I would watch the staff talk to other customers while I was browsing to try to understand the situation and would just copy what the Japanese customers were doing. And then eventually I would hear those same words in enough different situations to be able to use them comfortably myself. What you will eventually realize is that when dealing with foreigners, Japanese people tend to respect effort more than perfection. This has been true in pretty much every case for me, except for the odd person who's like not having a good day or something like that. You know, the way humans are, regardless of what country you're in. Yeah, the second pointer to myself has to do with identity as a foreigner. And this one took a while to really settle in. So, no matter how long you live here, no matter how fluent your Japanese becomes, no matter how many local habits you adopt, you will always be the foreigner. You might be the friendly one, the cool one, the mysterious one, the regular at the bakery, but you'll still be the foreigner. Now, that doesn't mean they dislike you or that you're not welcome. Far from it, in fact. Most people are kind, curious, or just indifferent. But what it does mean is that there will always be a little bit of distance, a quiet line between us and you. And us not meaning, I'm not included in that us, obviously, but sometimes you'll forget it's there until something reminds you. A comment, or maybe the way they stare at you, or a question that you've been asked 100 times, a moment where the vibe just shifts even just a little bit. I mean, let's take the phrase, for example, in Japan, there's this common phrase that they use with foreigners, and that's "nihongo jozu." And of course, that just means, wow, your Japanese is really good. And if you're new here, that might feel like a compliment. I'm pretty sure it does. It did for me. But when you've been here for years, it hits different. And it reminds you that no matter how normal Japanese feels in your mouth, to many people, you'll still be the outsider speaking their language. And it's not mean spirited, okay? I'm not trying to take this to a negative vibe. It's just a reminder that you're being seen as a foreigner first and everything else second. So the tip here is to learn to accept the cultural distance without taking it personally. Spending a lot of energy trying to erase it will only burn you out. But respecting it, working within it, and still finding and forming strong connections with people, that's where the real beauty of your cross-cultural life begins, I would say. For me personally, with the Nihongo Jozu, every once in a while, I'll get it. But for the most part, I don't really hang around completely new people. For me, it's like I'll be with somebody I already know and then I'll meet a new person. So when I do start speaking Japanese, I don't get the Nihongo Jozu often. Like I can't even remember the last time I got it. But whenever there's a situation where I happen to be with one of my foreigner friends, like let's say Devin or Scoey, I haven't hung out with Scoey since like 2013. But if I'm hanging out with Devin, let's say outside of Kasai, for example, and we go to some restaurant, we'll just engage with the Japanese people and just to make conversation, and then they will say that, and I don't get offended by it, to be honest with you. The only time it kind of seems offensive is when there's girls involved and somebody's trying not to get cock blocked. But yeah, that brings me to the third pointer I'd give to myself, which has to do with how Japanese people communicate, especially non-verbally. So as you may know, Japanese communication is what's called high context and low confrontation, which basically means that a lot of meaning isn't spoken outright. It's implied. It's wrapped in tone, timing, facial expressions, pauses, and most of all, politeness. Coming from a more direct communication culture, obviously America, or in my case, the Pacific Islander population of America, that can be a recipe for confusion. So a sentence like, that might be difficult, might sound like a soft maybe to you, but to them, it just means a straight up no. And other times you might think you're being told no, but it's actually a cautious yes, but with strings attached. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at Narita Airport to visit my parents. They were transferring from the States back to Saipan. And I brought some US cash to exchange at the booth. And I didn't fill in the flight number section in the form that you're supposed to fill out. But instead of telling me that they're not allowed to entertain transactions from residents of Japan, the lady asked me if I was with family visiting from overseas, to which I said yes. And then she asked me to tell the honnin, or the owner of the money, to come and do the exchange for me. But since it was my money, I just told her straight up. I was like, it's my cash. And that's when she replied by finally telling me that their policy doesn't allow them to exchange money for residents. So after that, I had my mom go back and make the exchange. And then she added, of course, her flight number. And it wasn't until the whole thing was over that I realized that she was trying to coax me into getting someone else to do it without actually just telling me. And this kind of stuff can sometimes mess with your head. You feel like you're missing signals everyone else was raised to just catch instinctively. And to be honest, you are, but only because they've been immersed in it since birth. And you haven't, obviously. Whenever it happens to me in an overly obvious way, I get really annoyed. Maybe it's just the American in me, but here's a good analogy that I think every husband in every straight marriage will get, regardless of what country you're from. So just imagine when your wife tries to get you to take out the trash by saying, "What's that smell?" Or when she's clearly pissed off, but she just says, "I'm not mad." It kind of feels similar to that. And I'm pretty sure you get what I'm saying if you happen to be married. But the pointer here is you have to learn to hear what's unsaid, to read between the lines. That's such a big thing here, is reading between the lines. It's not about being psychic. It's about listening with your eyes, your gut, and your patience. The better you get at that, the less confused and more respected you'll actually feel in day-to-day life. Yeah. And the fourth pointer to my fresh off the boat self has to do with mental health. Isolation, burnout, and identity shifts here are real and they are common, especially when you're living in a new country, far from your support system, speaking a new language, navigating new expectations, and trying not to mess up even basic daily tasks. There was a time when I was really down and I hadn't spoken to another islander in a very long time. The expectations at work far exceeded my duties. The pay was unfair. The boss was excessively condescending and I had no privacy. And the cops happened to pull me over twice in a matter of just days. And just because I clearly didn't look Japanese. So all these stressors were piling up way too high. I eventually got sick. I tore a lower back muscle from, according to the doctor, coughing way too hard. And I couldn't walk. So I had to take 2 weeks off. And to be perfectly honest with you all, the things that have successfully allowed me to hang in there and overcome all these challenges, and I'm guessing it's pretty obvious, but it's cutting out the alcohol, lifting weights, in my case, 4 to 5 times a week, mastering blood pressure, especially in your late 30s, if you're at that point, and getting consistent and adequate sleep. Mental health still isn't widely or openly acknowledged in Japan, even in 2025. We mentioned in the previous episode with Devin that there are places that exist, so you can look for them, but you'll need to be proactive because while there are places you can go for mental health care, they are not very abundant. One golden nugget of advice I got from my father-in-law a long time ago was you need to think of rest and recovery as part of your job. If you don't treat them with the same level of importance as you do your career, you will eventually burn out and your body will show signs. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard a story about someone going to the hospital because of severe stomach pain, chest pain, nosebleeds, or bald spots, only to be told by the doctor that they couldn't find anything and that it's likely just from extreme stress, I'd probably be a rich man by now. Just ask any Japanese person you know, especially people living in the city. I guarantee you they either know someone or it actually happened to them. So the main takeaway or the pointer here is find a sustainable stress outlet. For me, it was taking a physical and physiological approach, hoping it would carry over into my mental state. And thankfully, it has. But it might be very different for you. So just keep that in mind. And then the next pointer to my younger self is this. A lot of the systems you'll deal with in Japan, banking, schooling, health insurance, weren't built for you. They expect Japanese fluency, but more than that, they assume you already know how everything works, and you don't. For example, the hospital system here is very different. Back in the States, you usually have a general doctor, a primary care physician, if you will, that you can go to for pretty much anything. That's why commercials say stuff like, consult your doctor before taking Viagra. Everyone has a doctor. But in Japan, it doesn't work like that. There's no general clinic you can just walk into for whatever issue you're having. You have to figure out what kind of problem you're dealing with, and then you have to go to a clinic that specializes in that specific area. Do you have a skin problem? You go to a dermatologist. That's called a hifuka or hifuka. Or do you have a throat or an ear issue? That's an ENT, ear, nose, and throat doctor. So that's jibika in Japanese. If you have stomach pain, you go to internal medicine, which is known as naika. And then if you have an eye problem, you got to find an ophthalmologist or ganka in Japan. And here's the thing. Every time you go to a new clinic, you have to fill out an application form. And they give you a brand new ID card for just that clinic. There's no universal card, no centralized system. Over the past 14 years, I've probably collected more than 10 of these little plastic cards, and each one is tied to its own specific place. It's just one of those things you wouldn't know until you live here, but once you do, it becomes second nature. You feel sick, and now you have to play doctor before you can even see a doctor. And then another thing that's different about the system here is that you also need what's known as a Hanko. And this is a kind of name stamp, like those ones you see in movies from the 1700s where like a king pours hot wax on an envelope and then uses his ring to stamp his family crest on it. But just imagine that. But instead of a ring, it's a stick. And obviously, if your name is in Japanese, you're going to have it custom made. So the first time I was told that I needed a Hanko, I was like, okay, fine, I'll go get one. And I figured maybe it'll cost me like, maybe $20 or something like that. I walked into a shop And then these ladies tell me that spending over $100 is standard. I ended up buying one for $280, and it was custom made out of some kind of special cow horn. And the entire time I was like, man, this is expensive. But the ladies kept trying to like reassure me that you're not paying over what other people are typically paying. And then I find out from my friends, like they end up paying like 10, 15, $20. But then it's because their names are Japanese. So they can just go to some store and then there's like this big ass rack that has like hundreds of them. And then they can just choose the one that has their kanji on it. And then they just buy that. It's really cheap. Whereas obviously in my case, my name being really long and in English, I had to have it custom made. But that's how Japan gets you. You're just trying to open a bank account or sign a lease. And the next thing you know, you're stamping a sheet of paper like you're royalty or something like that, which might sound pretty cool. But if you forget it, or God forbid, lose the damn thing, these places won't let you just sign. You absolutely have to stamp it with the Hanko. No exceptions. Except recently, I got lucky. My daughter got accepted into high school, and then I had to stamp something, but I didn't have it. So they allowed me to just sign. And that was a first for me. So your mileage may vary. But for the most part, there are no exceptions, and you have to have the Hanko. So the pointer in this case is that you've got to learn to advocate for yourself, not loudly, not rudely, but clearly and persistently. Ask questions, follow up, bring extra documents. Assume nothing will go smoothly the first time, and you won't be as frustrated when it doesn't. These systems weren't built with foreigners in mind, and that's not an excuse. It's just a reality. But you can still learn how to work with it. You just have to stay patient, stay sharp, and stay on it. And with that said, that's it for today's episode. So if you have any questions, comments, or if you want us to share anything on the show, just let us know. And until next time, excuse me, Masen, and see ya.